News coming to you live from Algiers. I'm your host, Miriam Zin, and here are your top stories for tonight. In the ongoing Zionist war on the Gaza Strip, the death toll rises to 35,173 and the humanitarian crisis deepens as Israeli occupation forces continue border crossings shutdown. WHO validates Palestinian Ministry of Health figures. Over 35,000 deaths confirmed in Gaza conflict, the majority of whom are women and children. Next, the International Court of Justice is to hold hearings on South Africa's emergency measures requests over Israeli attacks in Rafah, southern Gaza. And British parliamentarians voiced strong support for Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. Welcome back to your program. At the outset, Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza announced on Monday that the death toll from the ongoing Zionist war on the Gaza Strip had risen to 35,173 martyrs and 79,061 injured since October 7, 2023. The ministry added in its daily statistical report that the occupation committed 8 massacres against families in the Gaza Strip, killing 82 and injuring 234 in the past 24 hours. The Gaza Strip faces yet another tragedy as 6 Palestinians lose their lives in a Zionist bombing target in an UNRWA school in Nusayrat camp amidst ongoing incursions by the occupation army into Rafah. Hussein Barkan has more details.
Onslaught by the Israeli occupation on Gaza continues unabated, with no respite for its beleaguered residents. This time, an UNRWA school in Nusayrat camp, serving as a refuge for displaced families, becomes the target of a vicious bombing, claiming the lives of 6 Palestinians.
Men are crying, women are crying. It's a terrifying situation. Those displaced from the north and those displaced from the south are all in the shelter centers of the agency UNRWA. This should be a red line. Schools belonging to UNRWA should be a red line. It should be safe for the displaced. There should be an international position, an Arab position. There should be protection. More than this, what can we say? There is no God but Allah, and God is sufficient for us, and He is the best disposer of affairs.
Witnesses recount harrowing scenes of destruction and despair as homes are reduced to rubble and families torn apart by the indiscriminate violence. Displaced individuals from Nusayrat camp express their anguish and desperation, highlighting the pervasive sense of insecurity that grips the entire Gaza Strip.
The targeting took place at around midnight. We have been working since 12 a.m. and we have recovered 15 martyrs and dozens of injured people from the site. We recovered many survivors. The work is still ongoing, but it requires a lot of time and efforts because the tools and equipment we are working with are simple. We are in need of heavy machinery and tools to help us recover the martyrs and survivors from the site.
The Palestinian Civil Defense condemns the use of internationally banned weapons by the Israeli occupation, emphasizing the catastrophic impact on the innocent civilians, particularly children. As the conflict enters its 7th month, the ground incursion into Rafah exacerbates the humanitarian crisis, leaving hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians without a safe haven.
The Gaza Civil Defense stated that their current efforts are insufficient to meet the necessary requirements for recovering the bodies of thousands of martyrs due to the absence of heavy equipment. In a press conference, they highlighted that using primitive mechanisms would take up to 6 years. They emphasized that the silence of international bodies is not compelling Israel to supply fuel to Gaza, constitutes a death sentence for the civil defense, hampering relief and emergency efforts.
الاحتلال بتزويد قطاع غزة في ظل عدم توفير المعدات الثقيلة كالبواقر والحفارات وتلف مركبات.
Given the severe shortage of heavy equipment and excavators, coupled with the damage sustained by civil defense vehicles, our efforts remain grossly inadequate to achieve the crucial task of recovering the bodies of thousands of martyrs. Using these primitive mechanisms would extend the recovery process to an estimated 6 years, particularly as UN officials have reported that the Israeli occupation has left behind approximately 37 million tons of rubble across all regions of the Gaza Strip. The silence of the United Nations and international organizations in compelling Israel to provide fuel to Gaza, particularly for civil defense operations, amounts to a death sentence for our civil defense apparatus. This jeopardizes our relief, emergency, and rescue efforts overseen by the General Directorate of the Civil Defense.
The World Health Organization expressed on Tuesday its full confidence in the statistics of the Palestinian Ministry of Health in the Gaza Strip regarding the numbers of deaths, saying the ministry is already close to confirming this number. Last week, the Ministry of Health in the Gaza Strip updated its continuing of the death, or its counting of the death toll of about 35,000, and said that the identities of about 25,000 of them have been fully identified so far. The same source said that more than half of the victims are women and children.
25,000 have been identified, 10,000 are still missing. And if you add, and if you look at the calculation of the figures, you will come to the point that you still have about 60% of the casualties being women and children. So this is what we come to when you count up the figures provided. So nothing wrong with the data. The overall data are still the same.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said Tuesday he was appalled by the escalation of the military activity in and around the southern Gaza city of Rafah by occupation forces. This comes after UNRWA reported that nearly 450,000 Palestinians have been forcibly displaced from the area in the past week. Throughout this period, the occupation military has intensified bombardment and other operations in Rafah, while also issuing evacuation orders for parts of the city. Israeli occupation forces continue shutting down access to the Rafah border crossing and the Karam Abu Salim commercial crossing, despite warnings of an unprecedented humanitarian crisis. The continued closure of the Rafah crossing, the primary land route for aid entry and for the evacuation of the injured and ill to receive treatment outside Gaza, threatens to exacerbate the humanitarian emergency, particularly as food supplies in Gaza are rapidly depleting, as reported by UN agencies. Human Rights Watch reported that Israeli forces have targeted convoys and buildings of international aid workers in Gaza despite organizations providing their coordinates for protection. At least 8 strikes have occurred since October 7, resulting in the death or injury of 31 relief workers and others. The attacks, conducted without prior warnings, hit civilian areas with no military targets, indicating their random and illegal nature. The Al-Qassam Brigade, the military wing of the Hamas movement, published video clips of its fighters targeting occupation soldiers and vehicles east of the Jabalia refugee camp in the northern Gaza Strip. Let's take a look.
يا رب. يلا روح قول يا رب. جبت القماص جاهز؟ توكل على الله.
The Al-Qassam Brigade's military wing of Hamas movement also published scenes of targeting a Zionist troop carrier east of Rafah, as well as position of occupation soldiers and vehicles inside the Rafah land crossing in the south of Gaza Strip.
يلا يلا على اللي ورا انا هيهل في النص. يلا 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 دارت علينا بقى.
Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani said that negotiations on the prisoner exchange deal are at a stalemate. The Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister added in a statement on Tuesday that there is a lack of clarity on the Israeli side regarding the way to stop the war, stressing that his country will continue to work and put pressure to reach a ceasefire agreement.
Especially in the past few weeks, we have seen some momentum building, but unfortunately things didn't move in the right direction. And right now, we are in a status of almost a stalemate. Of course, what happened with Rafah has set us backward a little.
The International Court of Justice said on Tuesday that it will hold hearings on Thursday and Friday to consider new emergency measures sought by South Africa over the Israeli attacks on the city of Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip. The court added that these hearings are part of a broader case where South Africa alleges Israel of perpetrating genocide against Palestinians. Video clips circulating on social media platforms documented Zionist settlers once again intercepting trucks carrying humanitarian aid to Gaza. The trucks, which were attacked at the Tarkumiya checkpoint west of the Al Khalil, were heading to the Gaza Strip, where people are in desperate need of humanitarian aid. Nabil Khazini.
Initially, this humanitarian convoy was meant to travel from the Palestinian city of Al Khalil to Gaza, where aid is extremely needed. But on its way, it was intercepted by these settlers. Boxes of aid were shown ruined. This video shows all the 8 trucks set ablaze in the occupied West Bank. The UN says it is worried about these attacks.
It is an absolute disaster that we're not receiving aid at the moment. Really, it's so important to put that in the context of people not having sustainable food and people not having sustainable water for 7 months. Because anywhere in the world, if you were to close an important crossing, there would be chaos and disaster. But people wouldn't necessarily starve. The problem that we are facing here in Gaza is that for 7 months, people have not had the needs met. There are no hygiene kits, there is no fresh water, there is no food for people. So when the crossing is even not functioning for a day, this is having a significant impact on the response that we are able to provide here. So for 7 days now, without humanitarian aid coming in, it's a complete disaster here, a complete disaster.
These last assaults on aid convoys only leave hungry stomachs there in Gaza waiting for food in despair, as the Strip witnesses a huge shortage of food following months of war, during which the occupation is blocking aid. What remains is the little quantity of food provided by charity organizations. But what can a drop of aid do in an ocean of hunger and misery?
We completely depend on these charities. Sometimes we have no money, and sometimes there is nothing available. So we depend on these charities approximately 90%. Therefore, if the aid stops arriving here, we do not know at that time where to go and how to act.
In addition to the intense bombardment, relentless strikes, and artillery shelling, the occupation is using starvation of civilians as a method of warfare in the Gaza Strip.
We move now to other developments. In his capacity as a special envoy of the Algerian President, Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf arrived on Tuesday evening in Muscat, the capital of the Sultanate of Oman, carrying a written message from President Abdelmajid Tebboune to Sultan Haytham bin Tariq. A statement by the Algerian Foreign Ministry explained that the visit is part of ongoing communication and coordination between the two leaders of the two countries, reflecting their common will and mutual ambition to enhance the fraternal ties between Algeria and the Sultanate of Oman and the distinguished historical rapport between them. In the same context, Algerian Foreign Minister held bilateral talks on the sidelines of the ministerial preparatory meetings for the 33rd summit of the Council of the League of Arab States with Jordanian Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi, where the two parties discussed topics related to Algerian-Jordanian relations as well as inter-coordination regarding preparations for Manama summit. Minister Attaf also met with his Mauritanian counterpart, Mohamed Salem Ould Merzouk, in a consultative meeting devoted to exchange and analyses and views about the latest developments in the situation at the Arab and African levels. The head of diplomacy also met with his Yemeni counterpart, Mohsen al-Zindani, where the two parties reviewed the latest developments in the Yemeni arena and the prospects for providing and mobilizing the necessary support for Yemen through the UN Security Council. President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, received on Tuesday in Algiers the mayor of Marseille, Benoît Payan. The audience took place in the presence of the Director of Cabinet at the Presidency of the Republic, Mr. Boualem Boualem, and the Wali of Algiers, Mr. Mohamed Abdel Nour Rabhi.
It's an honor for me to receive an invitation to visit Algeria and the capital, Algiers. I had a warm meeting with the President of the Algerian Republic, who believes in future. The Algerian President is a proud man, and I evoked with him the situation at the international level. We tackled the latest developments prevailing in the world. We also talked about this visit that led us to Algeria and which is of a paramount importance for us.
And Algerian Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research Kamal Badari signed a memorandum of understanding with Italian Minister of University and Research Anna Maria to enhance bilateral relations and exchange experiences in higher education. The agreement aims to foster a fruitful partnership, particularly in pedagogy, to establish a unified educational environment between Algerian and Italian universities.
We are poised to sign an agreement aimed at fostering cooperation towards establishing a partnership in higher education, with a particular focus on pedagogy. This endeavor seeks to forge a cohesive educational environment between Algerian and Italian universities, enhancing scientific, cultural, and athletic exchanges among students, as well as fostering collaboration among all stakeholders in higher education and scientific research from Algeria and Italy.
The Algerian Minister of Energy, Mohamed Arqab, received on Tuesday the Secretary General of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum, Mohamed Hamel. The meeting was an opportunity to review ways to enhance cooperation between Algeria and the Forum in the field of scientific research and innovation, which is guaranteed by the Gas Research Institute, which was inaugurated last February on the sidelines of the 7th Summit of the Heads of State and Government of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum held in Algeria. In this context, both parties agreed to establish a specialized working group tasked with developing a work program, as well as regulatory and legal frameworks for the Institute's programs. Former head of the UN mission in Libya, Abdullah Batili, attributed the ongoing political stalemate to the monopolization of power by certain leaders. In an interview, Batili stressed that Libyans desire democracy and freedom, urging an end to political rivalries to facilitate progress towards a solution. And a group of British parliamentaries from various parties in the United Kingdom expressed support for the Sahrawi people's inalienable right to self-determination and their legitimate defense of their just cause. This occurred during a discussion session on the Sahrawi issue in the British Parliament, attended by the Minister of State representing the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Sahrawi news agency reported that the British minister reaffirmed the government's commitment to assisting both parties in the conflict to achieve a just, lasting and acceptable political solution, ensuring the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. The Kremlin announced on Tuesday that Russian President Vladimir Putin will visit China on May 16 and 17 at the invitation of Chinese President Xi Jinping in his first foreign visit since his latest victory for a new term as president. The Kremlin said that Putin and Xi Jinping will discuss a wide range of issues of comprehensive partnership and cooperation and will exchange detailed views on international and regional issues. And the two leaders will also sign a joint agreement at the conclusion of the visit. Also, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow is ready to confront the West on the battlefield in Ukraine if necessary. Lavrov said before the Federation's Council during a discussion of his reassignment from the President Vladimir Putin to the Foreign Ministry that Russia is ready for dialogue, provided that it starts from the current realities in the region, as he put it. Lavrov's statements came in response to the talks planned to be held in Switzerland regarding peace in Ukraine without Russia's participation. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said during a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in the capital Kyiv that a new U.S. arms shipment has begun arriving in Ukraine and more supplies are expected to arrive soon. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Kyiv on Tuesday in the first visit by a senior U.S. official to Ukraine since Congress last month approved a military aid package amounting to $61 billion. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for following us. This was it for tonight's program. See you tomorrow.